I think the most difficult parts of the pandemic for me was the unknown. Probably scared about getting it, but also I was furloughed, which I'm very grateful for, to keep safe, but that kept me away from the norm. That kept me away from here, from friends, from colleagues, supporting young people, which is what I know, is what I do. So I wasn't leading the normal life, being furloughed at home and I suppose keeping myself safe, but that didn't feel like my priority at that time.
The most difficult parts of the pandemic wasn't necessarily adapting the teaching, because we've got the skills to work with young people in different ways. Most difficult part of the pandemic for me was lack of contact with my extended family. I had to accept that I had no way of going and seeing family if they fell ill, especially when we didn't know how serious it could be. And then when we did know how serious it could be. So definitely that was very, very difficult. I guess in a way that helps me empathize with the young people at the Good Shepherd, because they lose that control as well.
I think obviously that restriction on who you could visit, who you could see was really difficult. Remember kind of going to my mum and dad's house and just kind of standing at the window or the door, and you think back and you're like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. But yeah, I think that was the kind of difficult, was that disconnection in relationships, and for my own children to not just have that kind of normal childhood that they were so used to having, and being confined within the house was a lot of adjusting for us all, I think.
I felt as if I was scared to leave the house in case I caught COVID. Then when it comes to work, I felt as if I was still isolating myself because obviously the pandemic. So my anxiety took place when COVID took place, and it's basically had an impact on me because I've never had mental health before until the pandemic, and I still have anxious to do things.
People have changed because of it. People still have fear, and they're maybe not socialising as much. Children have suffered, maybe missing out on school, so there's a backlog, and I think people have had to change, and I worry about people's mental health because of that.
I think for some people there is still that kind of fear, and COVID isn't going to kind of go anywhere. So for some people, I think they're kind of used to that social kind of isolation now, and going out to places that they maybe kind of once enjoyed maybe kind of seems a bit more kind of frightful now, or that kind of that contact that we're all kind of so used to having, people are maybe just a wee bit more wary of that. And I think there's probably been a lot of kind of alcohol abuse and stuff as well, which is going to have an impact. Poverty, I think, is kind of going through the roof with people losing their jobs or kind of going to 0-hour contracts, or, there's just been a whole accumulation of kind of things that have happened as a result of COVID, and that's going to have real impacts on families, on individuals, on everybody really.
Particularly, I think there'll be a real increase in addictions. I think there'll be there already has been a spike in mental health, and I think that will continue. I think for people with younger children who were born or kind of toddlers during the pandemic, I think they're going to have a lot of social and emotional difficulties, and the obvious one's the economy, and how we'll come back from that.
Education across Scotland, across the world, is going to struggle because I think young people have gotten out of the habit of being in a classroom. I think I've seen within my own kids that they have had this pressure put upon them. I don't think it's just the pandemic though. I think other elements like Brexit, like Trump, and now the situation that we have in Ukraine, all of these are pressures being put on our young people and ourselves So I think we're all having to experience a mental health crisis and feeling those stresses and strains. I think I also have an impact long term on global economy. And every member of staff is going to have to tighten their belts in some way because of the rising prices. But it's not something that we can all talk about. It's just like stiff upper lip time.
We're going to see problems with being able to interact socially, anxiety in children increasing.
For me personally, I'm still going to wear my face mask regardless because I'm used to it, and I would fear to let my guard down, like not have that face mask for protection.
I absolutely think that young people and staff will cope and recover partly because we have to. In situations like this, we don't have any choice but to cope and recover because the alternatives are not bearable. I think people are very resilient, and I think people who work in a community and live in a community are even more resilient. So the fact that we are a centre that works together will ensure our recovery. People who are working at home alone, I think, are more at risk of not being able to recover in the same way that we are, because we will have each other.
You know, it's something that we never lived through before, so we did adapt very well into life in the pandemic. Pretty sure that we'll be fine, life out of the pandemic. But what that looks like, I'm not really sure.
I think to continue doing what they're doing. From day one, I think the Good Shepherd was very clear about how they were going to manage this. Very supportive, communicating through emails, through staff gatherings, and that the communication came from the top right down to the young people. I think if we continue to do that, but also move things along when we can to try and get back to some sort of kind of normality, because I think, you know, young people are okay, but I think for staff being able to kind of mix a bit more is really important. I know we've all missed each other at breaks and lunch, and so I think just continuing to move forward when we can.
I think just for everybody to keep working together and to hopefully have the same goals.
I think we did quite well in the GSA because, especially in education, we always focus on the well-being. So quite a lot of the kids are quite anxious all the time because there's like new restrictions out and new rules and stuff. But for me, I always have a check-in for well-being because, like, at the end of the day, if you want to make sure the staff's happy and young people's happy. So if I come into work and I'm feeling quite down, the young people actually brighten my day when I come into work, so like it's always quite good to have a wellbeing check. And for us, we always stay quite good for wellbeing. We always like talk to the kids, talk to the staff. Even if we're feeling down, we're always there for each other.
It's just continuing to kind of work together, support one another. Thankfully, we're kind of coming out the other side of things now, and just getting back to what kind of was once normal, and just learning to live with COVID and not have that kind of fear and stuff, but taking things away from it as well, I suppose, you know, the hygiene kind of side of things. I think this is really kind of highlighted as well, your hand washing, the importance of it and stuff, just to stop not just the transmission of COVID, but the transmission of many things.
I think the positive aspects were this place communicating and being supportive, giving staff that support at a hard time, because staff still wanted to come in here, but that meant putting themselves at risk, you know, and going back home to families and stuff. And I think with the Good Shepherd being so adamant about how the way they were going to do this from day one, communicating through emails, constant updates, it let staff see that they were going to be okay. And also, you know, there was the fear of if you got COVID, you know, how ill you were going to be, but also you have the fear of what's your job going to look like. And I think knowing that wasn't going to be an issue, that you were being supported, was really good. And I think just continuing to support the staff who then have the motivation to continue to support the young people.
Well, it made me realise how adaptable I am, also how adaptable the young people are, both at this school and the school I was teaching in previously. Really impressed with how people go, right, okay, let's get on with it. Let's see what we can do. When in fact you'd be excused for wanting to just crawl into bed and stay there for a year. I, for one, really had some very positive parts of the pandemic when we had complete lockdowns and I was working in a school where I couldn't go into school. I realized how much I like my family and the time that I could spend with them. I felt very, very fortunate, and I'll always look back on that time as a time that I was blessed being able to spend just with them.
What we need to recover is for things to get back to normal as quickly as possible, not to kind of drag our feet in that, even though everybody's kind of apprehensive, and just for everybody to have the same goal and the same hopes for the future.
So like when we used to come into work, we used to like have quite a close team, like used to like go to staff room and have a chat and that, but like I'm not used to like on Teams and Zoom now. That's all the time I get a bit of interaction. But I think it's quite good because in here we always like have like handovers every morning, and then we can talk to staff when we're feeling down, and I think it's quite good to be in here because especially on a Friday or like even at big events, it's something to look forward to get everybody all together again, which is quite good.
Slowing life down a wee bit, just kind of enjoying the time with kind of, well, I suppose kind of during the height of the pandemic, just kind of that close family. I miss being out with my friends, so now that things are kind of opening back up, just taking all those kind of things that you maybe just took for granted before, and appreciating them for what they were.
They've always been good at communicating, but I think that's something that can always be worked on, and I think they took that to the next level. I think probably as a company they've learned probably how to deal with things differently through HR, down to the houses, how to support staff, and keep staff motivated at a really horrible time when people are coming to their work again worried about what they're coming into and then what they're going back home to. So I think they've really shone in the sense of supporting staff, and that will only trickle down, and the young people will see that staff are, if staff are more supported, they're more relaxed in their job, they'll be more motivated and happier, and young people will see that.
I think family contact has always been something that's been so important at Good Shepherd, but I think when we took that away because we physically couldn't allow it because of the guidance that was in place, we recognised the impact that had on our young people, and how important the physical family visits, if appropriate, are to our young people, because they couldn't have that. It was all on kind of Zoom and stuff. So I think that just kind of recognises the whole team approach, I suppose, and really kind of involving the family and the children's lives as well.
Being able to adapt. I think we've ironically learned a lot of things from the pandemic, about how to have virtual meetings and team meetings and all these different things, things that we probably would have shied away from had we not been forced into it.
Just to continue to do what we're doing, but move on when we can move on. We thrive on mixing our young people for events and things like that, and I know, we've got a lot of new young people, so they don't know that it's something we did. But when we do events, we do it really well, and we've never, touch wood, ever had a problem, because the young people love it. So I think just continue to support the staff and the young people the way they have, but start getting back to some sort of normality so we can start kind of having fun again.
I'm always really impressed with how the young people cope with the situation they're in. They're all here for different reasons. but they all just get on with it. I mean, some struggle, definitely, but the vast majority of them, even those who are struggling, also are just getting on with it. And that's a testament to the human spirit. And that's why I think ultimately we will be fine.
So obviously we have learned a lot in the pandemic, so we can build from it. Again, what that looks like, I'm not really sure. I think nobody really knows what normality is going to look like, but we need to roll with it.
I think for young people and staff to move forward is just to keep talking all the time. Like if they're struggling, just be there for the young people and staff, because if you see our staff ever right down, it's everybody's job to make sure everybody's alright. So always check in on them, make sure they're fine, and even if we don't like fun activities and stuff, like to get everybody all together, staff and young people, because quite a lot of young people like to do like mixed activities or else go outside in the pitch doing stuff with staff. Like for me, I like helping out in houses to actually do stuff for the kids, because it's another face for them and they actually look forward to it, because obviously I teach in education, but when I go into houses it's a different thing for them because they see a different side of it.
Just about kind of recognising the importance of that everybody kind of plays in things. Obviously we've spoke about the importance of family, and it would be really nice for the organisation, the staff and the young people to start getting the family back into the centre. Obviously some children and young people don't have family that they can visit, so I think we're also very good at recognising the importance of just that kind of one-to-one time with those young people, to give them that kind of qualitative time, which was something I think we were good at before, but getting back into the kind of way of things like that. And you know, we do have some children and young people who are across boundary, which can make things a wee bit kind of more difficult, but we've seen that Zoom can work. It might not be great, but it's better than the no contact at all. So yeah, there's things like that can always be used as a backup.
I'm hoping that people continue to communicate their feelings. I'm hoping that if someone's having a stressful time, young person or staff, that they'll find someone that they can talk to. That's always been the way that people can progress and move forward, through communication, supportive communication.
You know, I'm very grateful for the support that I've had personally, and I know there's other staff feel the same, and that will show in the company when, you know, God forbid if there's ever anything like this again, then people will come to their work and they will work through it because they know they've got that support.